hope that feeling is so well and be in the system just before the next coffee break. But as Deval mentioned, my name is Jess. I'm the moderator of today's panel. I'm the sales director at Stitch. So along with the rest of the Stitch team, we're privileged to work with enterprise businesses every day in redefining their payment ecosystem. And many of you are in the audience, so thanks for joining us. We are starting off with a topic that is critical for anyone focused on growth and remaining competitive in today's market. For obvious reasons, I hope that is all of you. And the theme is the South African consumer of tomorrow. If it were a reality show, it would be keeping up with the consumer and would likely be as erratic. I will set the scene today with some notes that won't be profound. We all know it's just mostly just speaking it into the air. But times are constantly changing. Sylvester, you really started off this panel well by a lot of what you mentioned today, but they are changing quickly. And to give some context on how quick that is in the Stitch world, is we have, as all fintechs and startups do, we're surrounded by acronyms. One of which is TCC, which is things change, people change. Example, 4 years ago, we were a single method and purely online. Today, we have about 8 different methods, and we also launched offline, so TCPC. Back to the consumers. These changes are due to the impact of new technologies, shifts in societal values, and the roller coaster that is the economy. And this naturally impacts the way that businesses need to connect and serve with their customers. And so I really like what you said about not that you have to and that you get to, and I think we forget the privilege of that concept. Consumers today are also very difficult. They expect a lot more from brands. They don't just want to buy our products and services. They want a personalized experience, and at every step along the journey, they want you to know already what they want from flexibility, convenience, trust, and value. Super difficult. You're either going to be, at the base level, trying to keep up with that, or what we've noticed with a lot of the businesses that we work with, looking to innovate and actually pave the way for how we deal with those consumers. And I guess it's the reason that a lot of you are here today. I am privileged today to be joined by a group of industry leaders who I think each will bring a unique perspective to the topic. Deval did give a slight introduction to each of them, but I will hand over to introduce yourselves. We know what you do, but a little bit about your business. Luke, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm one of 2 co-founders at Bash. Bash is a platform business being incubated within the Fashini Group, TFG. Essentially what we are doing is digitizing a number of TFG's assets, which include its customer base, 3,500 stores, POS, which we'll talk a little bit about, e-commerce, of course, aggregation of its inventory, location sources, etc. From what was historically a federated business, so a conglomerate of lots of separate businesses, into an aggregated omnichannel platform.
Great, I'm Laurian. I am one of the directors at OneDayOnly. We are South Africa's original daily deal site. We offer awesome deals for a 24-hour period. It's a crazy business model. We basically build an entire website at midnight every night, sell a whole lot of products, and then bash it down and start again. It's basically Groundhog Day every single day. We are purely online and just crazy deals, crazy brands, and exciting. Everyone who's got that sort of FOMO factor of not knowing what's going to be up on the day. And that's who we are.
Hi everybody, I'm Carlien. I'm the head of digital of the Travel Corporation. Our business it's a global company that own a whole bunch of travel brands, local companies like Thompson's Holidays, Spend Travel, international like Kontiki and Uniworld River Cruises and a whole bunch of others. So our businesses range from the buses that take the Springboks to the games to the Pen Travel stores in the malls that you see around South Africa. So it is quite varied, exciting, specifically dealing with a sort of passion by like travel is quite an interesting thing to be part of.
So we'll kick off with customer personas and segmentation. So Laurian, I'll start with you. OneDayOnly has been around for a while, so around 2010. So you've naturally seen quite a big shift in consumer behaviour. And from your perspective, how has the profile of the South African consumer evolved? And are you noticing a difference in how you attracted customers back then to how you're attracting it now?
Definitely. I mean, I think, as you say, everything changes so quickly in South Africa. I think the reality is we all know what the economy is like right now. Everybody's cash strapped from absolutely every sort of walk of life. Everyone's sort of a little bit more, aware of what they're spending. And they still want great brands, they still want great products, but they would really want to get a deal. And that really does play very well into our favour. I think a couple of things have changed over the last few years. One specifically is that, you've got this younger emerging Gen Z, and they want what they want, and they want it now. They want to pay how they want to pay, so they really do want to have different payment methods, or to be able to pay with loyalty programs, or to be able to pay with credit card, whatever they want, but they want to be able to have this absolutely seamless payment experience, and you have to make sure that you're providing that. They're wanting personalization, so much so that if you are feeding somebody loads of ads with, sort of nappies and prams and what have you, and that is not the stage of life that they're at right now, you're going to lose them as a customer completely, because it's very fast and very fast moving. So personalization is absolutely, absolutely key for the younger generation. There is also a very, very strong expectation with online shopping that it has to be fast, it has to be convenient, it has to be seamless. Like, that is the baseline. Anything over and above that is what you need to build on and build that brand love. But getting the basics right is an absolute non-negotiable. I think for the older generation, a couple of years ago, it was a lot more challenging. And when I say older, I'm talking 35 plus. So, but I fit well into that category. It was a lot of times sort of people weren't really concerned with sharing their credit card details, etc. That has really, really changed, and COVID did help with that a lot. So people are very, very happy to share their credit card details, and that's becoming more and more comfortable as we making people more aware. So I think definitely in terms of personas, it used to be working on the old method of working towards LSMs and demographics. Now it's all about interest-based. We can be sitting in the office, exactly the same age, live in the same street, but I might be very, very tech-savvy and looking for tech products, and somebody else might be a mom looking for products for their kids. And again, it needs to be the right product served to the right person at the right time.
Thanks. And Luke, for you, coming from TFG store only with Bash like digital first, that's obviously quite an interesting topic with customer segmentation. How did you approach that, and how do you treat the different customers now?
It's very interesting indeed. In a previous life, I spent about 12 years in pure play e-commerce, evangelizing e-commerce as the pure plays do, which is to say stores are dead, e-commerce is going to take over. The truth was that didn't happen. Depending on what you read, e-commerce penetration somewhere in the region of 5 to 7%, depending on the category, which means 95% remains in store, stubbornly so. And later in my career, I had an epiphany that it's not an either or, it's an and, which is really what the meaning of omni is. And from a consumer centricity point of view, you can shout at the customer to come to your channel, or you can embrace where clearly the customer wants to be, which is what the 95% vote is saying. And so, to answer your question directly, we obviously have various modes of segmentation, but one of the ones we track is those customers that are, we kind of, with regard to omnichannel, we segment in loosely 4 buckets. Store only, so that is a customer who exclusively shops store. Online only, that is a customer that's tantamount to being a pure play customer. Omni, but there's 2 subsets, so that is a customer whose first purchase is online and migrates to store, and then the inverse. First purchase was in store and went on to buy online. So the omni customer is 5.5 times more valuable within the TFG group, the customer who shops both channels. That's a consequence of two things. It's a bigger basket size. I think multi-brand orders online are about 73% of orders are multi-brand, where stores tend to be same store shopping. And the second is the annual order frequency. I guess the immediacy, the convenience, etc. You get a couple incremental orders per year. But what's really interesting is customers, so of the two subsets of the omni, as in started with store and went online, or started online and went to store, customers who migrate from online into store, their subsequent store purchase is 2x any other store shopper purchase, which is to say, not only is online driving online growth, but it's driving a new customer cohort back into stores that's incredibly valuable. And naturally, the group's quite excited about that. You know, that the gut with a lot of businesses transforming is this going to cannibalize my business? And we're starting to see that it's actually enriching and providing growth in a market that is very depressed. So,
I'm that customer. I had never really I didn't really often go into a TFG store. Bought something on Bash, went from my favorite one is iconography, which is online only. Bought something else, went into a store, but then the money was already out my account. So they were like, we can refund you. I was like, oh, well, I could just browse and see. And I ended up buying like double what I would have done. And I now always go into the store when I pass it, which I normally would have, at least Sandton City one is next to the Zara. I wouldn't go into it, and now I do. So, I mean, I've kind of morphed into your brick and mortar customer.
thank you.
Now, you have any vouchers? I'm very well. Moving on to travel. So, I read an interesting stat. It actually may have been in one of our blog posts, but Discovery Bank and Visa evaluated the market last year, so in 2023, and they found that South African domestic in 2023 exceeded that pre-pandemic, which I tend to travel a lot, so for me that made sense, but I genuinely didn't believe that it had, or maybe it was ignorant, but I didn't believe that it had exceeded it pre-pandemic. So Carlien, for you, naturally travel is one thing that has changed significantly, and I think in this post-pandemic era, which is still relevant to speak of, how are people prioritizing different experiences? How are you dealing with your customers differently? Because there's kind of gap between value, convenience. I think that sits very firmly in your world, and the flexibility, which becomes quite tricky to manage.
Yeah, I think for us, just thinking about this transition through the pandemic, from a travel buying perspective, flights, it still is a massive issue for us. Yes, people might be able to afford to go to Thailand for a very nice all-inclusive holiday, but the flights is what stitches us up. It's really the issue that as a travel industry we face, and we've started working with big airlines to kind of figure out how do we kind of bring prices down. Specifically for South Africans, it's not as easy to move over to Europe as an example, and the prices are exorbitant. So players like Discovery Travel that come in with great discounts, any kind of miles that you can cash in on flights, that is a game changer. Even for us, not that we obviously we're not Discovery Travel, but our customers would book their holidays through us because our businesses are all about customer experience. Our consultants have traveled to destinations, so when you speak to someone in our stores or online, it's actually someone who has deep expertise about your travel experience. If you're thinking of splashing out on a Europe holiday, you definitely don't want to just buy it online and just hope for the best if it's a 100k booking for your family. So we've seen that a lot of people would speak to us in our stores, but then say, I can actually do my flights via my bank. And that's totally fine. So we're sort of continuously working, how do we kind of make it easy for the customers, and we don't want to just box them into saying you have to book everything through us. People are very comfortable in kind of picking out where can I get the best value, best deal. But we definitely see, especially when you're starting to book your accommodation, and we spoke about it last night, like patching your experience in the Kruger Park together, you kind of want to speak to an expert, and that's what we're seeing is, yes, people want to have a frictionless digital experience, but you absolutely want to have a person at the other end of the line. So we're using our sort of chat channels, our in-store channels, to make sure that we patch people up with our experts as quickly as possible, because it's a big buy, it's an investment, it's something maybe once in a lifetime, and we want to make sure that we get our consultants to kind of advise.
From the trust side, did you find it quite difficult post-pandemic, especially with airlines, where everyone who had a ticket was unable to be refunded, and then there's this perception that maybe I just go directly to the airline?
Yeah, it's been like, obviously hindsight is 2020, and you can see, oh shucks, I probably should have bought this through a travel agent, or I probably should have not just gone with the most cheapest deal because it's non-refundable and all of that. So we've done quite a lot of work educating just the general consumer about how do you buy, what is the sort of terms and conditions, and we've definitely seen people are sort of transitioning back to a mix between, yes, I want value and I want to have a good deal, but I want to make sure that if the pawpaw hits the fan and I have to speak to someone to change my flight, there's an ash cloud, there's a snow on the runway, there's something and I have to change my ticket, that it's easy to do, but I know I've got a travel consultant who is available on WhatsApp to quickly serve me with, here's your amended booking. So I think we're definitely dealing with a more savvy consumer, learn from mistakes maybe through the last few years, and that's something that we're sort of keeping the fall.
Awesome. So, Luke, moving to you with the pandemic theme, there's been a customer in the e-com world expectation shift on convenience, delivery time, when I need to receive my order, how I can refund my order. With Bash launching 2022, 2023, good research, 2023, that's a short timeline, and you've done phenomenally well in gaining a lot of users. How did you kind of have that exponential curve to guarantee that with what the consumer expects now?
I think it's a variety of factors that have led to a pretty rapid maturing of the market. COVID obviously was a huge forcing function, mostly because South Africa's large incumbent listed retailers and other businesses actively promoted online as an alternative to their customers. And so that obviously built credibility and trust, and it's kind of obvious and intuitive that it worked really, really hard. Where previously you had Takealot, you had Superbalist, you had OneDayOnly, for example, marketing, but they were always pitched as a niche to the wider consumer. I think the second was the rise of online grocery, the success of the likes of 60/60. It's a really low risk trial for e-commerce. It's low risk because it's small basket sizes. You can order the handy. The delivery anxiety is 1 hour, and it's visible. So you can watch that driver. If you've never bought online, there's the bike, here it's coming, and it comes. And so that fear and trepidation of, a 48-hour delivery or a week delivery, I think that second part of the market got a lot of consumers into their first online order. And then the third is the entrance of the very aggressive Chinese players, the Temu and Sheins. Loss leading aggressively. You open Shein or Temu, you might be offered a 90% off discount. And again, that pushed a lot of people online. And so counterintuitively, it's provided a massive tailwind to most online retailers, I would say. There are some exceptions, but certainly if we look at Bash, I think for the categories that Temu and Shein operates, you could expect maybe a 20% loss of share, but we saw other categories, furniture, jewelry, branded goods. I doubt anyone in this room is head-to-toe dressed in Shein. And so it did more, those three things have done more good than harm, and you can see it in the numbers. So there's a complete dislocation between brick and mortar retailers reporting and their online reporting. which is quite interesting. So brick and mortar retailers are explaining supply chain shocks, load shedding, inflation, a struggling consumer, etc. And I'm talking Woolworths, TFG, Truworths, you name it. But all are doing double-digit online growth. And given that the market and the GDP growth is flat to X growth, depending what you believe, it implies that there's a horizontal shift where the mass consumer adoption is starting to kind of rebalance in a more omni way.
What's interesting there with like the likes of Shein and Temu from a consumer point of view is there's this whole concept that everyone is supporting local, wanting to be sustainable, and then you have, it's kind of like the uninformed consumer where suddenly you get a good deal on Temu and you're like, okay, well great, who worries about sustainability when I can get a shirt for 40 rand? And it's really hard to juggle because they're super opinionated and they'll go after you and go after your brand if something comes up that you're not sustainable or you're not local or whatever the case may be. That same consumer is likely to be dressed in like full Temu, which is very hard to manage. On like the Shein Temu side, at least for, and it's the daily flash deals, you have to keep up with the trends. They change really quickly. Something can go viral in an afternoon, and then you are able to go onto maybe even an Amazon, a Shein or a Temu and see this like variety of categories. It really is endless, which covers a lot of the categories that you do. How have you been able to tackle that with, I guess, even like stock control, planning, scheduling, with kind of how they're impacting?
Look, I mean, there's no doubt that it has impacted all of the South African businesses, and I think just down to the very obvious fact that they weren't paying that, and the duties were so low. That is just something that has at least been balanced, and I think that's going to be a very favourable for the South African market, or for the South African businesses. I think that as a South African business, we have joined Proudly South Africa, and we do really, really promote the fact that we are, founded in South Africa by South Africans for South Africa, and it is really, really important. But as you say, it then doesn't really translate into sales, because once a month we were putting up Proudly South African shops, promoting smaller businesses, etc., and that wasn't necessarily where the sales were coming through. So I just think it's just a mind shift that all South Africans have got to make sure that we are looking at things that are sustainable and promoting and supporting. But I think in terms of from OneDayOnly's point of view, you've really got to build on your brand, and your brand love is super, super, super important, because what differentiates us, and what makes every South African business, your business, different to those guys. For South Africa, for OneDayOnly specifically, we work on the FOMO factor, that sort of, am I going to miss out? What am I going to find today? What is going to be the surprise? We've also really, really worked on making sure that we do supply and do stock the great brands, which is something that you don't find on Shein and Temu. And we also have made sure that we photograph things beautifully, we curate things beautifully. We've got a beautiful in-house studio with models and photographers, etc., to try and make sure that we're representing products well. And so I think it's just a case of finding what it is that makes your brand unique and special, and pushing that forward.
I think what you've done well there is the Shein and the Temus are more like the gimmicky purchase, where there's a more intentional purchase on like a OneDayOnly, because you don't really wake up thinking that you need to buy it that day at 9 o'clock with the transactions being made. On innovation, Luke, you've alluded to it a little bit. Kian and Sinead spoke about omnichannel and the importance for us, and we had a discussion when we spoke earlier this week around the innovation with an omnichannel technology. Carlien, also after Luke's spoken, hand over to you, because you've mentioned with Pen Travel store focus as well. But I'd love to spend a bit of time on how you're approaching it, and a little bit about, maybe for the audience if they're not sure on the whole omnichannel tech side of things.
Sure. So I guess the starting point for us was to learn which markets are really good at omnichannel, so who are the leaders. They're pretty exceptional in South America, which is obviously also a great PIX market. Southeast Asia as well. And we went there and we looked at it. And I think the word simplicity has been used a couple times today. But it was really a bit of an epiphany when we went, and the epiphany was we have spent a long time as a market building in e-commerce, that is, building native apps. I'd say most South African pure players, app penetration is somewhere between 60 and 80%. And the primitives of an app are you can search for product, you can add it to cart, you can pay for it, and you can have it delivered. And that's fairly well understood, and increasingly the customers understanding it at scale. And yet you walk into a store, a brick and mortar retail store, and the store employee, their entire universe is pretty much what's in their stockroom. So the experience is, how do you have this? They walk to the back, you invariably are standing on your phone, trying to kill time, and it's zero sum. They do or they don't. Fast forward to the Brazilian experience. We walked in, and every single employee, the demographic is very similar to South Africa. The stores are not Apple stores, they're not holograms and lasers and AR and VR. No, it looks like the Unwired or Discount or whatever. White tiles, racking people. But you have employees with an Android device where they've simply repurposed the B2C app primitives and made it into a tool that employees hold. And when you ask that question, if you're in a Total Sports, do you have my size? We've got a couple hundred Total Sports stores. Of course we've got your size somewhere. The answer is yes. The question is, how quickly can we get it to you? And in its simplicity, it was like a nirvana experience for me. I stood in the stores and went, oh my God, like what? This is so obvious. Why are we not doing this? And so we then riffed off that idea, and obviously where a mobile app is different to an in-store POS is a native app is card not present, whereas the in-store experience is largely card present. And so we started investigating hardware options. So we use an Android operating system so that we can essentially use the same primitives from our B2C consumer app, but it also allows us to dip, swipe, tap cards. We are working and have been working with XCPay, so I'm super excited that Stitch has, it was my preference that Stitch buy them immediately, which is a compliment both to them and Stitch. They're both partners that we really love working with. But yeah, ultimately we see that thing evolving from what is now kind of a rudimentary mobile POS to becoming the de facto POS, because of how, firstly, it enables staff, and secondly, it enables customers. Is that we want the de facto experience when you walk into a TFG store to be, we absolutely have the thing you want. We just may not have stock on hand. But we can have that item ordered to this store or to your house inside of 48 hours. And we think that's good for 10% group penetration, which could be an additional 4 billion rand for no additional stores or stock.
Which also helps if you have new malls coming up and you're finding space within those malls. I think the preconceived idea was try to get the biggest space so that you can hold the stock, and now you don't have to actually do that, which saves in other areas like rent, and I guess per square meter, staff looking after those stores. Carlien, from a pay and travel point of view?
Yeah, so we focused for Pay and Travel, so they have about 17 stores all throughout South Africa, mostly in big malls, and then obviously the online, all the websites. We focus on the customer experience and making sure that the data and the browsing, for example, once you've gone onto the site and you browse your packages, that data feeds back into our business system, so that if you walk into a store, that you don't have to have the same conversation about what you just saw online with a consultant in store, so that there's a bit of a connection between online and the store experience. And that helps people not feel like, oh my goodness, now I have to explain what I'm looking for over again. Our consultants can pick up, oh, I see you've done this, or you've looked at your Mauritius holidays. I think this is also an option for you. And it's just that continuity of the experience. And then back into, okay, well, here's our WhatsApp. If you want to, here's your quote, we'll send it via WhatsApp. And just that seamless kind of end-to-end connection with someone. So if they prefer to, a lot of times we would do everything online, that someone would be like, I just want to walk into a store and actually do the sort of booking acceptance and the payment with someone in front of me, and that should be as seamless as possible. Or the vice versa, they have a lot of sort of chats in a store, but they're happy to kind of go back and do the online kind of checkout experience. And that is just for us, it needs to be seamless. It cannot be broken up into pieces. And our consultants and us sort of be building these business systems at the back to make sure that everything is connected. A silly other thing is just geolocation. If you're on our website and you can see you're at Brooklyn Mall, or Brooklyn is your closest branch, we can say, hey, we've got some experts in Brooklyn if you want to pop in. That's something that is easy to do, but it just makes a customer feel, oh yeah, cool, I'm going there this afternoon, so I can just quickly pop in.
Yeah, also, if you have a bit of a journey, say, from online, you're minimizing your time in store as well, which is also helpful. And you touched on WhatsApp there. We don't have enough time to get into the social commerce side of things, which is also super interesting. So maybe a panel for another day. But as a cliche ending to the panel, I'd like to go across the three of you. And if you could share one key trend you believe will define the South African consumer landscape in the next few years, and how your company is preparing for that. Laurian, I'll start with you.
It sounds almost boring because it's such a buzzword, but personalization is absolutely key. We've got a base of 3.7 million people that get our newsletter every morning. I hope you guys are on there. And we've got to make sure that we are sending out newsletters that are relevant to each person. So we've got a very, very strong CRM system that is personalized to the kind of products that you're interested in. And then on the website as well, we are implementing a new marketing automation system at the beginning of next year, which will just give a much more personalized system for absolutely every consumer. And I think it just falls into the whole thing, which is, consumer is king, and how are we investing in that to make sure that people get the right product, right price at the right time.
Awesome. Carlien?
I think for us it's sort of needs-based consumer. So I don't think, and this is sort of evolution for us, is we're moving away from sort of boxing people into a mom of 4 children, a dad of 2. Like we know that it depends on, for us, travel depends on what you book. Your needs change. You want to potentially have a romantic couples weekend, or you want to have a family holiday with Oma and Opa and everybody included. So we've kind of focused back to what are the needs of the consumer and how do we fulfill that versus say, I'm a mom and that's what you need or what you want. Yeah.
Awesome. And Luke?
I think stores are wide open for disruption. E-commerce has been somewhat democratized, with Shopify's, Magentos, you name it, Martech. There is an arms race in that space that's been going for a long time. The platforms are quite evolved, and there's diminishing returns in terms of conversion rates and basket sizes. It all matters, but if you compare stores are largely unchanged for the last, I don't know how many decades. The average POS in store doesn't think about conversion rates in a way that is completely normal in an online checkout, doesn't think about upselling, doesn't think about cross-selling, doesn't think about user personalization in store. So if you combine, firstly, the size of the denominator, stores are the 95% opportunity, and the fact that no one is thinking about improving the store journey with the same mindset and the same rigor that we've been doing on a long time for online. I'm seeing things that are incredibly exciting in that space.
Awesome. Thank you. We will hand over for questions in the audience. Strong start. There we go. Lucy will bring you a mic. And while we do that, so each panel will have a round of questions at the end, around 5 to 10 minutes. So just bear that in mind. If something pops in over the discussion, to hold it to the end.
Hi, it's PRL. Question for Colleen. how much business is done in-store from your travel departments versus online?
Wolf. Okay, here we go. So if I look at Pen Travel specifically, probably about 80% is still in our stores and about 20% online.
Okay, and how much in-store upselling do you need to do versus what people shop around online for?
In store, I think our consultants that's where the magic comes in, where a consultant can have a very passionate conversation with a prospective traveller and upgrade and go for the all-inclusive and see the value in kind of adding a drinks package and doing all sorts of cool stuff. Where online, you're looking at that price all the time and you're thinking, ugh, no, I'm not going to add more onto this. But when you sit in front of someone and they tell you about your amazing holiday that you're going to have, it's easy to upsell to someone based on that passion and excitement that's coming your way.
Great, thank you.
Liz, back there.
So, interesting chat around Shein and Temu, right? If you're looking at the South African consumer, and Zobese spoke about it, that we're the most unequal country, with the minimum wage being about 4.8 of someone who's working 5 days a week for the whole month. How much influence does price point have? Because obviously those customers are not just looking for what's fast fashion, but also a price point, right? And going on to Bash and buying an iconography dress for 700 Rand, which is about 15% of that minimum wage. What does that look like, and what's the impact that you guys seeing around price point?
I mean, it's as old as time. The cheaper the price, the higher the conversion rate. And I think, to illustrate the point of how universally true that is, Shein and Temu they aren't just leaders in emerging markets that have wage pressure. Temu and Shein are the number 1 and number 2 apps in 50 or 60 markets around the world. So whether you're a first world economy or a third world economy, Eastern or Western, the promise of choice, because I think that's also not spoken about enough, the selection, the width of selection in those environments is immense. So last time I checked, Shein, for example, has about 50,000 dress SKUs, just dresses. And on top of that, obviously, price. And so yes, an uncomfortable truth with regard to the sustainability question is I've surveyed my customers annually across 3 businesses for 15 years around what is important. Sustainability is not important in South Africa. It's just not. What is important is price, number 1, and quality, which is loosely how long is this thing going to last, number 2. So yeah, you're never going to beat price, and that's why businesses like OneDayOnly that can do off price will always outperform. But you cannot produce all types of goods at a required quality level for that price. So the individual needs to make those trade-offs, and it's why Shein, as an example, and Temu, is absolutely dominating and hurting fast fashion, because fast fashion is, in the consumer psyche, by design, throwaway. And so if I'm going to wear something once, I may as well pay nothing for it. But I'm not sure that's how I feel about denim, for example. I'm not sure that's how I feel about furniture, necessarily, or a bed that I'm going to sleep in for 365 days a year. So, as I say, I don't believe Shein and Temu's value prop is winner takes all. Like we're trending to a place where 100% of what we buy is going to be no-name brand from China. I suspect it's a commodity type that is going to disrupt approximately 20% of the market and hold there for now. And if you're playing in that space, you're in trouble.
Awesome. Can I add to that? I just think there is a disconnect between people's sort of emotional value, which is that sustainability, proudly South African, thinking of the long term, buying things to sustain. There's that side, and then there is the I'm going to a party over the weekend and maybe buy my full outfit from Shein. So there's almost a dichotomy in sort of the intrinsic value versus actually where people are spending their money. But I also think there has been, it is a bit of a swing back. It was like Shein and Temu was so unbelievably on people's minds. And once they've bought a few times from it, and it's a little bit hit and miss at the moment. You get some things that are great, and then the next week you get things and the sizing is completely out and the quality is completely out. And I think there are a lot of people who are looking at it and going, oh, I don't know about that. I would rather just actually go for quality and buy once off and buy something that's going to be around for a long time. But fast fashion is fast fashion.
Thanks. That's it for questions. Thanks to the three of you. It's a pleasure to join. We'll share the stage with you. And we're done with round one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.